I'm Jim Lampley. Welcome to this look back at the stories behind Foreman, one of the most memorable fights in 30 years of boxing on HBO. The 1994 battle between brand new heavyweight champion Michael Moorer and former champion George Foreman was a pairing of opposites. The standoffish Moorer was a mystery to many, best known as the sport's first ever southpaw heavyweight king. Foreman was a grandfatherly pitchman nearly 20 years older than Moorer, with an unlikely long shot to become the oldest man ever to wear the crown.
The heavyweight championship of the world.
I get up in the morning, I want it. I go to bed at night, I dream about it.
What really sustains him is not just the power in his fists, but the power of his will.
I think deep at heart, Michael was a reluctant champion.
He's got a lot of heart. I want to kill those people that question that.
Back then, I couldn't see it as it was happening.
Moorer seems to be gaining confidence.
Teddy always taught me, if you're a complete fighter, you're able to fight anybody at any time.
He's a 45-year-old man in a young man's game.
George could break ribs with punches.
He's starting to get the Moorer's respect.
George has sweatshirts older than Moorer.
Other than being boxers, there was nothing in common at all.
In 1988, Michael Moorer arrived at the Kronk Gym in Detroit, a program unparalleled in the production of champion boxers. A small-town kid from Monessen, Pennsylvania, Moorer quickly adapted to his new surroundings.
When you fought inside the gym, you gained a lot of notoriety, recognition on what you did in the ring, and I kicked a lot of ass in there.
We turned him professionally in March of 1988, and in December of 1988, on nationwide television, he was the new light heavyweight championship of the world.
Manuel promoted him as the next Tommy Hearns, and so from day one, he was under a lot of pressure.
Michael Moorer was definitely one of the greatest light heavyweights I've had in the history of boxing.
Michael Moorer had knocked out every opponent he faced as a light heavyweight. With nothing left to prove in the light heavyweight division, he became a heavyweight, facing men often 80 pounds heavier than any previous opponent.
Fight goes down less than a minute into the fight.
By the time that Michael Moorer had began fighting as a heavyweight, he also had made big changes in his mental makeup. He wanted to do things more his way. Regardless of what you would tell him, he wanted to prove you wrong.
So in 1991, Michael Moorer moved out of Emanuel Stewart's house in Detroit, which he thought of as a home. His trainer and surrogate father had sold his contractual interests. For nearly 2 years, Moorer had a series of trainers, many of whom questioned his desire and mental makeup.
I had heard that he was a guy that would walk out in the middle of sparring, and I said, this is a guy who's just unsure of himself.
In 1993, Moorer's manager, John Davamos, hired trainer Teddy Atlas, whose reputation was of a tough-loving disciplinarian.
He would push me and I'd push him right back. He wasn't taking any shit, neither was I.
He had been abandoned by a father. He had been abandoned in certain situations professionally, so he wanted to test to see if you were really going to be there, if you weren't going to disappear.
There's no question that Teddy was the right guy at the right time.
He was my trainer, and he was also my friend. A person who taught me a lot. I love Teddy. I'm sure he feels the same way about me. He won't say it, because that's that tough guy image.
In only their second fight together, Moorer and Atlas walked into the ring to face the greatest challenge of their collective careers, a heavyweight championship fight with Evander Holyfield.
Let's get it on!
Will Michael Moorer get it on?
Short punches inside, doing damage for Moorer. Already his punching power a factor in the bout. Holyfield knocks him down.
Early in the fight, Atlas confronted Moorer about his passive approach in the biggest fight of his life.
You go in there and you start backing this guy up and you start doing what we trained to do. Otherwise, don't come back to this fucking corner. Do you hear me?
Where's the fire? Where's the passion? Where's the desperate need to win the title?
You're lying to yourself because you're going to cry tomorrow. You're lying to yourself, and I'd lie to you if I let you get away with that.
Boxing tradition suggests that a challenger must take the title from a champion, especially a respected champion like Evander Holyfield. Atlas worried Moorer wasn't doing enough.
There comes a time in a man's life where he makes a decision to just live, survive, or he wants to win. You're doing just enough to keep him off you and hope he leaves you alone.
Can Moorer win a championship this way? Does he have to show some passion and make something happen? Or can he just go along trying to win each round?
You want me to change places with you? You're blowing it. You're blowing it. You're satisfied just to do enough to keep him off you. You can't do that now. In this world, we can't do that all the time.
You heard heard it. That's as good as anybody can say it.
As the fight progressed, Moorer began to heed Atlas's instructions and went after Holyfield. To many, it seemed Teddy Atlas willed Michael Moorer to victory.
They made him the star, but I was the fighter who brought that out in him.
One last assault from the challenger.
And heavyweight champion of the world.
Was there anything in particular that he said that rung a bell? When he said this is the one opportunity in a lifetime, you've got 12 minutes to go?
He told me this is for my son, and I push hard for my son.
In addition to the credit given to Teddy Atlas, the legitimacy of Moorer's victory was called into question by rumors surrounding the health of Evander Holyfield.
Evander went to the hospital to have his eye sutured. At that point, he developed some shortness of breath, he got some fluid in his lungs, and there appeared to be an obvious problem with his heart.
The circumstances involving Evander Holyfield after the fight were so unfair for Michael because it made his victory almost shallow.
They took away from me winning the championship and focused it on him having a heart attack, so-called heart attack.
Coming off the Holyfield win, he felt like he had something to prove.
George Foreman also had something to prove. As a young man, Foreman was regarded as one of the sport's most brutal contenders.
He's not normal. He was never normal.
Frazier has never taken this kind of punishment, and it goes down at the bell.
When he hit Joe Frazier, I thought the world was coming to an end.
That George Foreman intimidated the hell out of a lot of opponents. He would just come in, growl, throw punches, and go home.
George was once as feral a figure or demonic a figure as Mike Tyson. Easy.
George was kind of a freak. George was unusual. George was one of a kind.
If you could survive 1 or 2 rounds with me, which would be a lot of pain and probably a lot of heartbreak in your life, because not only could I hurt you for those few rounds, 2 or 3 rounds in my previous career, I could really do damage to your body physically and your brain.
But Foreman would soon meet his match. In 1974, he fought Muhammad Ali in Zaire and lost the championship of the world.
The reason why he lost the title to Ali, not because Ali was better than he was, but George had one thing in his mind: destroy Ali.
And I remember beating this guy and hitting him upside the head. The next thing you know, I retreated just a little bit.
Ali, a sneaky right hand. Another sneaky right hand.
And I was on the floor, losing the championship of the world.
If you look at those film clips carefully and watch Zach Clayton's count, Foreman is up at 9, and so beaten he just goes to his corner. Just walks off. He was beaten mentally more than physically.
The bitter memories of losing his title haunted Foreman. He retired in 1977, and for the next 10 years served as an evangelist minister in his hometown of Houston, Texas.
The little fame and fortune we get is not going to follow us in the grave, brother, sister.
13 years after losing the heavyweight title, he began his seemingly impossible quest to regain it.
George came to me and said, "Butch, I'm coming back in boxing. What do you think about handling it?" And I talked to him and I said, "George, this is a young man's sport. You should leave it alone."
His return to the ring in 1987 was greeted with mocking laughter from the media.
When this comeback started, I was one of the guys going, "Oh, come on, please, boy, you know, some guys will do anything for a buck."
257. 257.
His physique was not as appealing as it was many years ago.
I had to hear all of that, and this is why I had to be in the most supreme condition of my life.
The public image of George Foreman was that of a disturbed and defeated former champ. By his own admission, Foreman returned to boxing for the money and nurtured a new consumer-friendly image in the process.
Oh, George. I was a salesman. I'd learned to be a salesman. I had 10 years out of boxing to be an evangelist, and I'd understood if you don't really make some noise and make people pay some attention, no one is going to stop and listen to you.
Foreman persevered for several years, facing opponents who ranged from dangerous to worthy to highly overmatched. When he first came out of retirement, he was considered a better story than fighter because of his selection of opponents. This perception changed overnight.
Right hand on the surface of Holyfield's head.
In 1991, Foreman fought Evander Holyfield in his first attempt to regain the title.
His fight with Holyfield was terrific, and he really fought well and fought bravely, and people started to look at George Foreman in a different light.
And they're applauding George Foreman for his courage and persistence.
With his well-constructed comeback in its 7th year, Foreman found himself in line for a title shot.
Mike Tyson was away in prison. Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe were in the process of deteriorating each other. Lennox Lewis had lost unexpectedly to Oliver McCall, so the landscape was open.
A few days after Michael Moorer beat Evander Holyfield, I got a call from George. And I said, George, you can't kid me. You want to fight Michael Moorer. And he said, more than anything else in the world, get me that fight.
Many still doubted whether at age 45, Foreman could recapture the title taking on a 26-year-old heavyweight champion. But George continued being his own pitchman.
I just want to go out there, show the world that 45 and 55 is not a death sentence. We can do anything we want to do.
He sort of became everybody's friend. A great quote. Let me talk to George. George will give me a quote. You know, he even asked you, what do you need?
In contrast, Moorer resembled a young Foreman, disturbed, disgruntled, and disenchanted.
They're looking for something that the average person at home will say, I gotta watch this. Michael Moorer just didn't offer that much verbally for people to catch on to it.
While Foreman moved the public, Moorer lost patience with his antics.
I knew what Teddy had told me, like, he's a big con. And I just look at him like,
go get me a sandwich and sit down.
Man, you're so fake.
Moorer had even less patience with the media.
Back then, I was probably very confrontational.
He was worse than reclusive. He was almost antagonistic to the point where you almost felt, not knowing any better, that it might be dangerous to be with him.
If you asked a question that he felt was stupid, he would say, that's a stupid question.
And to myself, it'd be, this asshole's going to ask me the dumbest question ever.
You're right, everyone does ask that question.
And now, you know how sports writers are. They're the smartest guys in the room. So they don't want to hear that from a fighter.
I'm not going to put on no act or put on no show for nobody.
People already thought he was a little mean, so we said, everybody thinks he's mean? Well, let's run with it anyway. So now you have the good versus evil.
Tonight, live from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, HBO Sports presents World Championship Boxing as Michael Moorer, WBA and IBF heavyweight champion, defends his title against the one and only George Foreman.
There are a lot of skeptics out there who think that George now is more King Khan than King Kong. George hasn't earned this championship shot as a fighter. He hasn't fought in a year and a half, and on that inauspicious occasion, he lost to Tommy Morrison. On the other hand, George is a star, and stardom, like age, has its privileges. There are many, many champions and very, very few stars. That's why he's here.
On November 5th, 1994, Michael Moorer headed into the ring to fight 45-year-old George Foreman. Moorer was looking to impress the public who ignored him, the media who questioned him, and the trainer who became a star instead of him.
Has Teddy Atlas received too much credit?
And he was going to do it his way.
You're even prepared for this, right?
And they booed me. That doesn't matter. I was still a champion.
Michael knew, he's not a dummy, that night in the arena, if they seat 19,000, 18,500 were going to be cheering for Foreman.
Foreman looked to become the oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history. But despite the optimism of the crowd, few gave Foreman more than a puncher's chance.
At that point, I just thought that middle-aged men don't knock out 25-year-old heavyweight champions.
I'm the boss man in here. Take hands to luck.
Left and a right inside by Moorer. Sizzling. Solid left hand over the top, backing Foreman up again. Sharp right by Moorer, who seems to be gaining confidence.
I liked that he was starting to feel good about being champion, feel confident, and trying to fulfill what everyone said he wasn't.
Teddy might have created a monster.
It's just a guy. Our sparring partners were better.
Teddy always knew that instilling confidence in Michael was one of the keys to getting him to perform at a certain level.
I have a sense here, Gil, that Moorer feels as though he has felt Foreman's power and it's not going to hurt him. That could be a big mistake.
I had no intention of throwing out my power at him in the first, second, and third round.
He didn't have control over the fight. He didn't have control over me.
And my intentions were to extend him and make certain that when I hit him with one shot, he would not get up.
There's no reason for you to stand there and let him find you.
George with a strong start in round 5. Moorer still standing right in front of him.
Big right hand. That's the best right hand of the fight by George Foreman.
I never could understand why he was being so courageous, standing in front of a big man like that.
we've seen him yet follow Atlas's instructions to move away and put more distance between himself and George.
Listen to me. You're not going to have a real friendly corner. I'm proud of you, but you're not going to have a friendly corner if you keep letting him go slow. All right? You're going to make him go faster?
I thought I was doing fine, but he's on the outside looking in. I can't see what he sees. He can't see what I see.
Harold Letterman, how do you see it so far?
Jim, 6 rounds to 1, commanding 5-point lead for Michael Moorer.
So I can perfectly understand how if Teddy was saying do this, do that between rounds 4, 5, and 6, and 7, Michael was thinking, why do I need to listen to anything? Everything I do is working.
What people don't remember is up until the 10th round, Michael fought the best fight of his career. I mean, he was tremendous that night.
I think he was brilliant for the first 9 rounds.
He was doing everything right, but I was doing something he had not prepared for.
You can see Foreman loading up with that right hand. I'm surprised that Moore couldn't see it.
How can you say he was setting me up for a 1-2?
I don't think Teddy Atlas and those trainers knew exactly what I was doing.
That's bullshit. Totally.
What's not bullshit is that George knew his best chance to hit you was with a blind punch you wouldn't see.
At the end of the last round, I thought Michael Moorer had found the key. He was moving to his right, and he was really picking George apart. He comes out this round, and he goes right back to his left again.
Michael Moorer was falling into a trap.
There was a case where George set him up with that right hand, but just couldn't pull the trigger. That's those slow reflexes.
I think the myth of George's power has been exposed by Michael Moorer so far.
He was swollen up. He was losing. He was starting to wonder whether or not he was going to pull it off.
And George makes it out of the round that bedeviled him in Zaire 20 years ago.
I fought Muhammad Ali in Africa, and I know what it felt when he got in the ring and everyone was cheering for him. I could hurt him, but the crowd just kept him on his feet. Now, for the first time in my life, I was feeling the same thing.
There was a guy that was clearly on a mission in his own life. He just knew you were dealing with something that mentally was a little different.
Foreman's strategy was not simply to land one punch, but rather a series of punches to set up what would most likely be his last shot to make history.
I was able to get a body punch in, just one body shot.
He threw that left hook just to move this guy. I got to get him to move this way. If he moves this way, I'm not going to be able to land this punch.
I would hurt them. I'd use the old cattle tactics.
So he was calm. He had the ability to think like that.
I knew then if I knocked him down once, he would have to stay down.
Win or lose, George is going to have a left eye swollen shut tonight.
George's best punch is still that left jab.
And my jab was going to be the most important punch in the boxing match.
He'd still snap a left jab out, but not do much else.
He says, don't worry, Mike, you know, I'm an old man. Don't worry about that. And you stand there. And then all of a sudden, boom, bing, there's a right hand right behind it. Don't stay there because he's looking to set you up one shot. And then he'll open up a combination to hit you.
The irony of this fight is both simple and complex. With 9 minutes left and ahead on all judges' cards by a large margin, all Michael Moorer had to do was stay away. Instead, he fought like a heavyweight champion.
Right hand landed there. And another. And a right and a left, and suddenly Moorer stopped punching, and it's Foreman's initiative.
The first punch I hit him with the straight right, it was just a little too high. He didn't move out of the way because he was kind of stunned.
And Moorer later told me that he was basically out on his feet before the last 1-2.
I expected him to fall, it didn't. And I said right then I was going to lower it just a little bit.
Sound goes Moorer on a right hand. An unbelievably close-in right hand shot. 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It happened. It happened.
I think that George has advanced ring intelligence.
I had this all playing out for the previous 3 months.
Bullshit. Don't fake it. You got lucky. Don't sit there and say you planned it. By no means.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
I was crushing him for 10 rounds.
Nobody had any idea that I was setting this fight up all night.
I don't have no bad feelings against George, but don't say that you set this up, because you're lying then. You're lying.
Michael Moorer, is that
goes Moorer on a right hand. An unbelievably close.
He never saw it coming. Everything disconnected.
My body was completely dead.
And it was devastating.
5, 6,
This was a chance for him to grow.
7, 8.
If he got through it, who knows what would have been in front of him. But we didn't quite get there.
It was an unbelievable achievement, but I have to tell you that my face was not on George. My heart was with Michael Moorer on the mat.
I respect the fact that he came in there to fight. And in the 10th round, at 45 years old, he still had the power to knock me out.
And I remember going up the freight elevator, and I remember looking over, and there was Michael standing right next to me, and Teddy standing next to him, and there was no one else in the elevator. And I remember looking at him, and I just said to him, I said, look, Michael, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You could say things about yourself that no man can say. And he said, I don't care about any of that stuff. He says, I'm only upset is, how do I explain this to my son?
I had told George for months, George, how are you going to find him? You haven't fought in a long time. He moves in there. He goes at a different angle. He's a southpaw. He wouldn't stand still for Holyfield. Why would he stand still for you? And George said, you watch, somewhere late in the fight, he's going to come stand in front of me.
Wow. I dreamed I knocked Michael Moore out before that fight.
George knew this all along. George saw this from maybe, from 5 years before. This is Zaire all over again, but I'm the guy who's going to win this time. I'm the guy who's going to be too smart for that other guy.
I lose the title in Zaire, and that wasn't the best of me. There I'm on the canvas, I try to beat the count. I had all kinds of excuses, but it was a hard thing, and it had been a hard thing to live down, that you are the heavyweight champ of the world, yet you don't have the title. For years, I had to live with that.
I saw George at a function here a few months back, and they showed the tape of him knocking me out, and I said a few words. I said, just think, if I'd have ducked one more time, we'd be sounding like Michael Moore girls instead of George Foreman girls.
Somebody once asked me, if is George Foreman winning the heavyweight title at age 45 tougher than Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters at age 46? And as much as I love Jack Nicklaus, nobody was hitting Jack Nicklaus. Michael Moore was still punching George Foreman.
And once again, heavyweight champion of the world, Big George Foreman.
Michael Moore later recaptured a heavyweight belt, but lost it to Evander Holyfield. George Foreman had never openly sought specific redemption for his demise against Ali in Zaire, but it's revealing that he chose to wear the same trunks on this night that he had worn in the jungle 20 years before. His triumph was trumpeted in headlines, but it spoke even louder in the fine print of endorsement contracts, which earned him hundreds of millions of dollars. Call it the biggest purse in the history of prize fighting. Thanks for watching The Tale of Foreman Moore.
This has been a presentation of HBO Sports, the network of champions.